relocating to a safe location, completely explainable.
Yep.
Going across the street, hey, maybe you don't know how many attackers there are. Fleeing to Mexico, not super explainable. Waiting a day, at that point, do we want to be reporting it to law enforcement? It starts to look weird. So you really need to contact an attorney immediately following a self-defense incident. We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we're talking about maybe some bad behavior by the police, some ATF overreach, and a trap when it comes to self-defense and how it applies to you. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And these all come from questions that you folks gave us, and we love them.
Welcome to Mailbag.
Yeah.
All right. At 47 Enterprises, can police cover, move, or disable your security cameras with or without a warrant? Richard?
Wow, this is a really good one. And the short answer is, well, the police are going to do whatever they're going to do, but what is the punishment for them behaving badly? So I'll say it probably goes down two paths. One is evidentiary. Hey, does this affect things at trial? The other one is, could this be a violation of your constitutional rights? Or could it be a violation of an internal policy that would warrant discipline? And I'm going to say it's going to be all over the place.
Yeah, so I will say, this is not something that the police should be doing without some kind of court order, and potentially, and I think it's
bad.
It's bad. What's contemplated here is that there's something on there that you need or you will need that it is gone because the police did this to you, and unfortunately, the remedy for that is not easy. I mean, it's instructive to your jury, basically.
Yeah, and so this is where, and this is a new term to enter into the, to the community now, is spoliation of evidence. And this comes from a common law concept of, did you ever have to read the diamond ring case?
No.
So, all right, so a diamond was missing. They didn't know, where it was. They basically determined, hey, you hid or they modified the size that the diamond fit into the ring, so they couldn't really calculate how big it was. And so they left it to the jury to decide, all right, you can decide how big this thing is, whether it was gigantic or small. It's based off of that common law principle that you get to assume good facts for this party because the other party acted badly.
Right. So if the other party destroys evidence, so, I mean, let's imagine you get a notice that someone's going to file a lawsuit against you, and you're like, oh, crap, and you start shredding documents, right? Well, when it turns out all those documents are missing, that jury is probably going to get a spoliation instruction, and they're going to be told to assume that those documents that you shredded were really, really, really good for the other side. So, I mean, that's the kind of remedy we're looking at. It's not, in the criminal context here, it's not a great remedy for you.
No, and it usually works out well in, let's say, scientific cases, like the government intentionally destroys like a sample of DNA or blood. The jury's allowed to assume, hey, guess what? It showed no drugs detected, or that it wasn't this person.
Yeah. Or the mice eat the mushrooms.
Yeah, sure.
That just happened, and was it
Houston? Man,
yeah.
That press conference was wild.
Yeah.
They have that administrator saying, we have rats that are literally addicted to cocaine breaking in.
Dope fiend rats in HPD's evidence room.
And so, you get to assume, hey, government, you did a bad job preserving this evidence, or maybe you intentionally or maliciously destroyed the evidence. Bank error in defendant's favor, you get to assume good facts for them. But it's an interesting question.
Yeah, it doesn't mean the cases go away. It doesn't mean anything super, super favorable to you, but it's a good question.
All right, next question. Gabe Hearn, 1980. What are the chances we get our money back from the tax stamp if suppressors are removed or the NFA is overturned? I think this is an easy one.
0% chance.
0% chance.
The government does not give you your money back.
All right, since that one was so fast, we'll go with another one real fast. All right, this one is to you. So Jeff 1007. If you hit a tennis ball with a baseball bat, did you redesign the bat for using the bat improperly?
Oh boy. So this is in regards to our discussion on stabilizing braces for SBRs, about how you can design or redesign that brace in order to make it more stockable. And that might get
shoulderable.
might get you in trouble with the ATF based on opinion letters that they've issued, and you can go back and look at that video for more of that discussion. But so excellent point. Just because you take your wiffle ball bat and you cut off the top and you chug a beer out of it, right?
Never done that before.
Sure enough. Right? Has it been redesigned? Though it's not fair. The law's not fair. The
No,
law's not fair.
but I think overall, and I would say for guns generally, we focus on the characteristics of the firearm. We don't look at necessarily how it's used. And this is what was so crummy about the rule, now vacated. Don't worry about it. But it focused on how things were used as opposed to how they were designed. And so that's kind of been injected into the conversation. I say for a little while, set that aside. Focus on the characteristics of the firearm. It's a good point, though.
It's good. Well, remember, there's still an ATF opinion letter out there that says don't shoulder it unless that shouldering is incidental or accidental. So
Sure.
we still have to think about design or redesign and about how it is actually used. Until something happens, we despite the fact there is no more rule on stabilizing braces, making your AR pistol, AK pistol into an SBR, we got to go back to those opinion letters, and they're just stupid. They're stupid.
Well, and I think it's not about, or what I think people need to think about is, hey, look, it can be made to be braced and shouldered. This isn't like a magical, it can only be one thing or the other. And and we're good line steppers, our community, I will say. And we've gotten pretty much as close as we can get to the brace line without crossing it yet. But, I can imagine, maybe not this ATF, but a future ATF saying, hey, look, guys, I understand this is a brace, but it's also a stock, and, we know because, and then lay out all the characteristics of the firearm. And the idea that you intentionally shoulder it just goes to evidence that it's designed to be shouldered.
Right.
And so it's something you got to keep in the back of your mind. I wouldn't lose sleep over this stuff, but yeah, braces. Why can't we just be cool with braces?
I know. I don't know. All right. At Deborah Hicks, C3D, if he shoots you with the 22 and you shoot back with the 12 gauge, will you be charged with escalation? So did you escalate the self-defense encounter just because you had a better gun? And the answer is no. I mean, the prosecution would have to be so utterly desperate to make that argument that you don't even have to worry about it. Now, you can imagine different scenarios. I mean, someone pulls out a pepper spray and you start shooting them. Well, that's not proportional force. Probably there's someone's coming up with some hypothetical about why that's proportional. And you've got something to think about there. But generally speaking, just because you've got the potentially more lethal firearm, if that's your worst thing you're worried about, you're in good shape.
Yeah, and the only time that I see where it's like guns on both sides of the equation and we really start talking about disproportionate force is whenever, all right, it's probably relying on something else, like it's no longer immediately necessary, like this person is disabled on the ground and the other party continues to fire. That's when we really start to see disproportionate amount of force, and it blends into, again, that immediate necessity.
Here, I'm going to read this one. I'm going to give it to you.
Okay.
All right. At Al Gwinther, 5254, how does the SCOTUS decision on Chevron affect items like current ATF rules?
Yeah, and we've talked about this a couple of times, and really this is what I think this is the headline everybody needs to understand. This Loper Bright Enterprises case, this is the framework by which we're going to judge changes to the Code of Federal Regulations, and previously agencies interpreted their own rules. Now it lives with the judiciary. So going forward, the judiciary is going to get to interpret the law and decide what it means. It's not going to be agencies interpreting their own rules. But as far as things that have happened up until this point, those things are going to be left undisturbed until they have to come up for some other reason.
Yeah.
All right. Next one to you. Chum Dog Millionaire. That's Chum Dog 6060. How often does it happen where they don't bring charges against a self-defender at first, and then years later they do, since there's no statute of limitations for murder? Fantastic question.
All the time.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. I have more cases that have come about years after the self-defense incident than you would even believe. Why? Well, you're absolutely right. There's no statute of limitations on murder. So, these things get re-reviewed by different eyes, and it just takes one person to look at it and say, this was murder, and then start that ball rolling towards an indictment.
Yeah, especially you think about all right, elected district attorney, they change. Maybe they have different political motivations, but here's why it takes a while. And we actually, one of our previous videos just recently, we talked about this, but all right, it's so obvious to the police on scene that this was self-defense, so maybe they don't do a great job investigating. It lands on a detective's desk. He goes, all right, I'm going to side with the police on scene for a while. Well, guess what? Then the bills start piling up. Then the victim's family starts making noise. Then, they just keep bugging and bugging, and guess what? The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and they're just like, all right, fine, just to appease the family, we're going to file this thing. That happens, I'll say, yeah, probably more often than it doesn't happen.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it really is. I mean, there's no final resolution. Even if they take your murder case to the grand jury issues a no bill, they can still take it again. I mean, it's often policy not to take it again unless there is some piece of new evidence, but that's policy. I mean, there's no law in Texas that stops them from presenting your case to every grand jury that comes about until someone finally true bills it. It's awful. But I mean, that's Texas, and I would imagine that is pretty common nationwide.
Yeah.
All right. At Robert Shute, 1984, do you automatically lose your claim to self-defense if you leave the scene? If you left the scene and contacted the police through an attorney the next day, would that make sure the police got witness statements and pulled all available video?
Wow, this is a good question. This is a good question. And so what I'll say is, if an incident is going to come to the attention of law enforcement, we want defenders to be the first person reporting it. And I have this conversation with clients where it's like, hey, this thing happened an hour ago. Once you start getting on that line of, do we call the police or do we just hold our cards? I'll say that timeline is way shorter than a day. I mean, once it becomes close to an hour, maybe a little bit more than an hour, that's where it starts becoming like we all call each other. We'll all conference a call and get,
run down the facts,
and we'll all say like, hey,
report it or don't.
Yeah, report it or don't. I mean, these things become real borderline cases, but relocating to a safe location, completely explainable. Going across the street, hey, maybe you don't know how many attackers there are. Fleeing to Mexico, not super explainable. Waiting a day, at that point, do we want to be reporting it to law enforcement? It starts to look weird. So you really need to contact an attorney immediately following a self-defense incident. Back to that first point of preparing for a case that might pop up a year later. But this question, as well.
Yeah. Oh, and remember, we had that Taqueria shooting here in Houston where the guy left the scene, didn't contact police until several days later through an attorney. The grand jury no-billed him anyway. So, it doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to end poorly for you, but as attorneys, we want everything in your favor, and that can just be a tough fact. So just, again, keep yourself safe and, call your lawyer, and then, hopefully we get it reported pretty quickly.
I may be misremembering. I thought they called the police. They just didn't show up for hours and hours. So he's like, I got stuff to do.
I don't think so. I think he left.
Dang. Yeah. Right, that's rough. All right. This one's to you. Bowed Wings. Do you guys only operate in Houston, Galveston area?
The greater Houston, Galveston, Fort Bend, Brazoria, Montgomery County, this area. We do take all criminal cases. So shameless plug to walkertaylorlaw.com. If you, have a ne'er-do-well family member who drinks and drives or
loves getting drunk and drive jet skis.
Exactly. Call us.
All right. This one's to you, Emily, because this is all feedback for you. This is one of probably 50 people who asked. This is just Nate Jackson 4791. Hey, what does that t-shirt say? And this was referring to our last episode.
Yes. So
sorry, not our last episode. 3 episodes ago.
Yes, I wore a t-shirt with it was a come and take it t-shirt, but it had Hebrew on it. That I will plug. He is no sponsor, but I got that at the pewpewjew.com. It's a great shirt.
I see him every year at Second Amendment Foundation.
I saw him at GOA this year. Nice guy. Nicest guy. So yeah, if you like it, a lot of people ask. That's where you go find it.
We'll link it in the description below. But we enjoy these questions. This is my favorite type of segment to do, but we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And leave us more questions. We love these episodes. Until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.